Hi there, lovely people. Richard here from Escapist CrossFit again. I really hope you enjoy these videos. If you haven't seen any videos before, I have some videos about the 4 pillars of health, and this video kind of connects to this, and it has to do with metabolic syndrome. And this is kind of a buzzword. People use it, but what does it mean? Metabolic syndrome as itself doesn't mean that much more than that there is a problem. And what can that problem be? Well, here are some of the problems that we can look at. There are some distinctions that if you have more than 2, more than 3, more than 5, then you have metabolic syndrome. But we can, for example, say, well, what's your body fat? Do you have high blood pressure, low blood pressure? Do you have high blood sugar? What's your insulin? What's your hip to waist ratio? Do you have Alzheimer's? Do you have dementia, cholesterol, or other hormonal dysfunctions? Now, I think one thing that is very commonly just accepted is that this is the state I'm in, and to solve this problem, I need to eat a pill, and then I can continue to live however I've been doing this. For, I would say, a majority of all these syndromes and underlying factors are based on our lifestyle, and not very often do we have time or even know what the lifestyle change has to be, because we don't really know what is good, what is bad. And it's not too easy for anyone to really know, because the science is not being 100% clear. Why is that? Well, there's a lot of stakeholders when it comes to science, and there has to be funding that is funding the science. And it's not very profitable always to do science on some of the things that has to do with health, unless you can sell something. So that's why the pill usually gets promoted. And this is also obviously having an impact on our healthcare system, because healthcare system and doctors and so on, they get educated on what medicine to use instead of what could prevent. Now, I'm not 100% sure how this is in all countries in the world, but it's not very uncommon that, for example, nutrition for a medical doctor might just be one lecture. And yeah, that's just not going to cover it to understand a lot of these things. So one common thing that you can ask yourself and ask a doctor, whatever, is that if you have any kind of syndrome, we say you have a dysfunction, a hormonal dysfunction, you have to ask your provider, your healthcare, your coach, is like, what is causing my hormonal dysfunction? Because most likely you were not born this way. There are always some cases where people are born with something, but even in that case, the question is, how can I change my lifestyle to make this hormonal dysfunction maybe not being as a big of a problem? And what we see and what we can kind of start to figure out is that one of the underlying causes in our lifestyles is that we are very sedentary. This is no surprise, meaning we're sitting a lot. So we need to be moving a bit more, and there's this general concept of 10,000 steps. That is like a good goal for a day. I don't think the steps, it doesn't have to be the steps if that makes it easier for you. Sure, go for the 10,000 steps, but more what I'm looking at is like, can you be, on your feet for, more hours in a day? And how can you do that when you're like, how can you get 10,000 steps when you're working in an office 12 hours a day? Well, it might be very hard unless you have like a treadmill underneath your desk, but you will need to have maybe a standing desk. It doesn't have to be fancy, but a very quick fix is just to get a box, put it on your desk, and start working by standing up. Why is this important? Well, it's going to actually start loading your joints and strengthening your joints. When you're sitting and you're being passive, you're going to have these kind of syndromes starting to happen, achy back, achy shoulders, but we can prevent those just by a simple solution of standing. But that might not just be enough. What we also see is obviously that we eat too much processed foods, meaning things come in packages, it has a label of ingredients. That means it's been processed. We should, and what we can see is that people that eat no processed foods, meaning, or at least as few processed foods as possible, they tend to also have much better health. And we're going to talk a bit more about that in a second. But also, one other thing is just this kind of physical threshold training, or like resistant training, is simply not happening enough. And why is this important? Well, the body is a biological machine, and it is so damn amazing that if you put some stress on your body, it gets stronger. And you don't want to break the body, but you want to stress the body. And you can see this, and this is how muscle grow. This is how bone gets stronger, is by doing some stress, and then it gets stronger. The like ultimate test of this is like when you break a bone or so on, it actually gets harder. I'm not saying you should go and break a leg, but you should definitely do more threshold training, meaning you should do a resistant training, do some cardio training. You should basically do CrossFit or something similar. And you don't have to go wacko and do 10 hours a day. We are talking about like maybe 20 minutes of 5 to 20 minutes, maybe sometimes a bit longer, of training a few times a week, and you will massively improve all these health markers. But one big underlying factor that is very disregarded when it comes to our nutrition is, I'll just change this to nutrition. When it comes to nutrition is we are not looking at what the nutrition is doing with our mitochondria. And the mitochondria is kind of the powerhouse of the cell. So on a cellular level, we can see the impact that food has on our body. And when we are in a very bad metabolic state, what tends to be one very key factor is that we are metabolically inflexible. What does that mean? That means that for most people, and the majority in the Western countries, they are simply not able to drive energy from fats, for example. And mostly this is the case. People are very good at driving energy from carbs or carbohydrates, but not from fat. So if they eat fat, they just have much less capacity of using that fuel. And that's one sign of being metabolic inflexible. If you're metabolically flexible, you can use both. And this is the best state you want to be in. You can basically eat a lot of different things, and that will be able to, you will be able to get energy from all those things. One thing that is happening with all these processed foods that we are eating is that we are bombarding our bodies with carbohydrates, and we are also having a lot of processed fats and oils. And they are all very highly inflammatory. So that also drives inflammation in the body. And this inflammation becomes more and more constant. So one way to see this in a very quick setting is that somebody has skin rashes, acne, and so on. It's a very highly correlated sign that metabolically there's something happening that is not really going well. And it's usually connected to what people are eating. So you're eating something the body is not really tolerating that well. And usually we can see that already on the skin. So this is also very commonly neglected because we tend to only look at body fat, and we see people, oh, if they're heavily obese, well, that's metabolically inflexible person or dysfunctional person. And yes, that might be true. But we totally forget this big mass of people that is walking around like ticking bombs, are in a very bad metabolic state. Something happens, they get some kind of virus, they get some kind of bacteria, and these people are heavily knocked out. And we might have seen this recently in the last years to become more and more common. What causes this? Why are some people then getting more obese than others? Well, has to do a bit with genetics sometimes. Sometimes it's just like, okay, they are simply just eating much more, but it also has to do with a lot of genetics. In my argument, I think we are just eating so much garbage, and this is basically leading us to all these, you know, issues we get with hormonal dysfunctions and problems with our sleep, problems with our blood sugar. Yeah, they're all connected. And what can we do to that? I think like one of the simplest way to see nutrition is that it's very individual what we need to eat. It's very individual depending on our genetics. Where are my ancestors from? That's going to tell me how good I'm going to handle some products. For example, people that are from North Europe, they will have better tolerance against lactose, milk products. People from the South will have less. People in Asia will have less adaptation to eating seeds to eat a lot of like these processed corn and stuff, and yeah, seeds from the Middle East that are very well spread all over the world. So a bit on our genetics and also how we kind of grew up is going to have an impact on our metabolic flexibility. And what we can do is that we can simply avoid processed foods. That might sound super hard, but and it sounds like it's a reduction in what kind of food you can eat, but most people just simply eat a lot of the same food and it's processed. But we can just change that to eating real food, which in my opinion is eating meats, vegetables, nuts, seeds, and some fruits. And that's going to keep us healthy, most people healthy. There are people that are, again, they might not have so good tolerance against seeds, as you might understand, grains are not here, but people have also problems with seeds and nuts, and some people have problems with some vegetables even. But usually what I see is that not a lot of people have problems with ruminant animals and animal products, but definitely like lactose, some fish, some of that stuff might also be allergic for some people. Again, it depends a bit on your genetics. And we need to find out what can you eat at your state right now to avoid having all those things. And by that, we can have more energy, we can live longer, be healthier, have better productivity, and we simply don't have to go to the doctor. We don't have to go to the pharmacy and have a lot of pills. So let's try to solve this problem before it becomes a problem. And if you have any of these syndromes, then it's already a sign that, okay, we need to start working. Okay, I hope this helps you to get some clarity. I know we were a bit all over this place, but metabolic syndrome is a big chapter, and just good for us to understand that what we put into our mouth and the inactivity we have is going to drive these diseases like Alzheimer's, dementia, blood pressure and stuff like that, high blood pressure. Okay. If you like this video, feel free to comment, feel free to subscribe and all that stuff. And see you next time with another interesting topic. Okay, see you later.